Okay, welcome to Factor Fixing Part 3. This is goes along with Worksheet Factor Fixing Take Part 3. Okay, so I'm going to show you a combination of what we've already learned and a slightly new method, which is going to help us because later down the road, our A is not going to be 1. So today I'm going to talk about factoring by grouping. So I'm going to group these together, and then I'm going to group these two together. Okay? So when I look at this first set, x squared minus 3x, what do they both have? I see they both have an x. So I'm going to write x. Now, when I take an x away from an x squared, that leaves me with x. And when I take an x away from negative 3x, that leaves me with a negative 3. Over here, I look at the 7x and the negative 21. And what do they both have in common? A 7. So I'm going to take a 7 away from both of them. 7x divided by 7 is x, and negative 21 divided by 7 is a negative 3. Take a moment and look. What do you notice? I notice that they both have this x minus 3, so I'm going to write that one time, and then I'm going to put together what's different, the x plus 7. So that is my factored answer. Okay, now I'm going to show you how we can use the method from the other day and get the same answer. So let me just erase this part, and we're going to keep the bottom answer so you can see that we get the same answer. What I would do here is that this is not in complete standard form because they forgot to combine like terms. So the first thing I would do is combine like terms. So x squared, negative 3 plus 7 is plus 4x minus 21. So I need to come up with, now listen, this is a little tricky because this is a negative here. Two numbers that multiply together give me 21, and when I subtract them, make 4. Okay? So I could come up with 7 minus 3. 7 times negative 3 is a negative 21, and 7 minus 3 is 4. Look here, when we took our shortcut method, this would be x plus 7, x minus 3, which is exactly what we got. Okay? So you could split this 10 apart and come up with two numbers that multiply together give me 10, and when you add them make 24. But I'm not going to take the extra effort. I'm just going to make my x and do that. So what are two numbers that multiply together to make 24 and add up to 10? So you kind of run through them in your mind. 2 times 12, 1 times 24, and going through the list, I came up with 6 and 4. So my answer is x plus 6, x plus 4. So far, no different than our previous video, part 2. So let's just move ahead, move forward. Okay, same thing. All right, slightly different. We have an 18 and we want to make negative 11. So this is where knowing your integer rules is very important. You have to remember that when I put together a negative and a positive using addition and subtraction, you end up subtracting. You take the sign of the bigger. But if both numbers are positive, I add them and keep the positive. If both numbers are negative, I add them and keep the negative. So in this case, if this is a positive, two negatives multiplied together will give me a positive, and when I add them together will give me a negative. So for right now, I'm going to ignore this negative, and I'm just going to think of two numbers that multiply together give me 18, and when I add them make 11. You would go through the list, 3, 6, no, that's 9. Oh, 2 and 9, now that's 11. 2 times 9 is 18, but also negative 2 times negative 9 is positive 18. And when I do negative 2 plus negative 9, I borrowed $2 from mom, I borrowed $9 from dad, so I owe them $11. And in factored form, that would be x minus 2 times x minus 9. So we're seeing all the different variations depending on where the negative is in the problem. Okay, for this one, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to use the algebra tiles, and then I'm going to show you how to use the x method. So using my algebra tiles, I'm going to start with my 2x squared. There's my 2x squared. I have a single x, And then over here, I have my 8 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, even though I follow the rules where it says 1x and it says 8x, if I put my singles, I can only have 4 singles. This isn't going to work with this combination right now. And also, it's kind of like, it's a little lopsided. So I'm still going to get, I'm going to have 9 here. So I just need to kind of even them out, distribute them a little bit evenly. So I'm going to move this guy out of the way for a second, and I'm going to replace it with that. So looking a little bit more even, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So still 9. The 1 and the 8 is the 9. But I'm not going to get 4 dots there. So let me move 1 away again. And let me see if I can build those here and here. So that's 2. So let me take away another one. So 4 and 5. Still, let's see. 4, 5. Still not going to get those single ones. Need single units. How am I going to make this happen? Okay. Let's double stack this way, because we want an even quilt. And then that's my 8, and I turn this one, that's my 9. And then when I put in my dot, okay, so that got me to the 4, but I'm not sure about that. That doesn't look right, does it? So let's reimagine it. Okay, so we have to continue to play around with the pattern and keep it even, because remember, this is a quilt pattern. And so I have to have 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I need one more. Okay, so there we go, 9, but that's not very even. Okay, so let me get rid of another one of these. And when I do that, I need to keep this even. So another one of these, and I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, so even, looking good. And then I put in my singleton, and there I've made a combination that makes a pretty rectangle. And if I were to write this in factored form, remember this is x, and this is x, x, and 1, and this is 4. So this would be x plus 4 for the length piece, and then x plus x is, when I combine like terms, 2x plus 1. Okay? For those of you that are maybe a little bit more geometric mind or visual, you probably really like this. Okay? I'm going to show another method. I'm actually going to show 2 methods, the one from the beginning and then using the X method that we talked about yesterday. Okay? So the grouping method that we talked about at the beginning, we're just going to go ahead and group as they are. Sometimes I reorder them because I like that. But to keep it simple, I'm going to keep them where they're at. So I look at 2x squared and 1x, and I notice they both have an x, so I'm going to pull out the x. And when I get rid of an x from each of these, I'm still left with a 2x, because this cancels one of the x and the 2 stays. And here the x cancels, and I'm left with a plus 1. And then when I look at this piece here, 8 and 4 have a 4 in common. And then when I divide everybody by 4, I get 2x plus 1. Here's a piece of advice. If you've done it correctly, your 2 parentheses should match. So what matches is 2x plus 1, and what doesn't is x plus 4, which is the same exact answer I got from this diagram here. Okay? So I'm going to show you one other method. If you remember in the last video, I talked about A times C, and I said that that was going to come back later. So my A times my C is my 2 times my 4, which is 8. Combining like terms, this is 9, so the 9 goes here. So I need 2 numbers that multiply together, give me 8, and when I add them, make 9. And I came up with 8 and 1. Because this is not a 1, I have to take this a step further. So You'll say, oh my goodness, you just wasted some work. Okay, so I slightly did. So I have the 2x squared, but this is going to be important when they don't break it down for you here, okay? So I have the 2x squared plus an 8x, because remember each one of these is an x, plus the 1x plus the 4, okay? Because the only thing I did is I'm rewriting b. And then, again, I'm going to factor by grouping, okay? So what do these two have in common? They have a 2x in common. When I get rid of the 2 and the x, I'm left with an x. When I get rid of the 2, I'm left with a 4. When I get rid of the x, it's gone. 1x and 4 has nothing in common, so it gets a 1. I still end up with what's in common. Sorry if you can follow my work. What's in common is the x plus 4, and then what's different is the 2x plus 1. I got the same answer. Now, in this case where this is already broken down, I would have just factored by grouping. Okay, but if they didn't break it down, if they had 9x, you can use the x method. Okay, so here's an example where the 5x hasn't been broken down for me. So I'm going to do 3 times 2, which is 6, and then the 5 is my b. So I need two numbers that multiply together to give me 6 and add up to 5. Well, lo and behold, my A and my C meet that description. So I'm going to go ahead and write 3, and if you don't want to forget, it's a 3x and a 2x. Now, this is the guy that got rewritten right here. So I'm going to keep the 3x squared, and then I'm going to add 3x plus 2x, because I rewrote the 5, plus 2. Okay? Now, if you had come up with 2 and then 3, this order would have been 3x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 2. And I actually would have rewritten it because I would have noticed the 3's matching the 2. So that's another step, is that when I want to go factor by grouping, I kind of line things up that match up already. So we're going to go with these two and these two. Looking at this pair here, they both have a 3. They both have an x. When I get rid of the 3, that's a 1. When I get rid of one of these x's, I'm still left with x. Okay? I got rid of the 3. I got rid of the x. Everything cancels. In division, when everything cancels, it's a 1, not a 0. Remember that. Okay, and in this next one, they both have a 2. So plus 2. 2 divided by 2, 2x divided by 2 is x, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, notice these match, so I must have done it correctly. So I'm going to start with what matches. I have an x plus 1, and then on the outside, I have 3x plus 2. If you remember, the reason why I love math is I can take my answer and do the problem again. I can work this out, and I should get my original problem. So let's look at that really quick, because this is the last problem. So I'm just going to do double distribution or FOIL, or if you're comfortable using your algebra tiles to make it work out. X times 3x is 3x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 1 times 3x is 3x. 1 times 2 is 2. Combining like terms, 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. I must have did it right because these two match.